3, 4. Welcome to Off Panel from Sketch.com. It's a rainy and almost wintry day here in Anchorage, Alaska, but that's okay. It means it's almost time for the NBA. That means it's season preview time, even on Off Panel. And today's guest is a fan of both comics and basketball and writes about both for Grantland. It's Jason Concepcion. Thanks for coming on the show, Jason.
Thank you for having me.
Well, the first thing I wanted to start out is I know a lot, you've written about comics for Grantland. You've, written tons about the NBA, and you also do Ask the Maester on there. But I wanted to start out by just getting some background on kind of your comic reading history. Like, how long have you been reading comics?
Since junior high school, I'd say. I guess I started, but I used to just always they had them on the rack.
Oh, yeah.
Where I used to get my hair cut as a kid. So I don't get random ones, but I never really pursued it as anything other than randomly picking up one issue of whatever Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to the Philippines when I was a kid. I'd about 11,
Mm-hmm.
and my cousin had an incredible comic book collection. He had them all bound, sequentially by title.
Holy crap!
So they looked like Encyclopedia Britannica, really thick binding. They looked like law books.
Yeah.
And I didn't. There was at that time not a lot. I didn't understand anything that was on TV, so it was just I just read those,
Mm-hmm.
and it was Avengers, West Coast Avengers, X-Men stuff, and I just burned through that. And then when I got back, I was like, I need to keep up with whatever is going on, especially in the Marvel universe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm mostly been a Marvel guy, although I'd say the notable arcs of DC I have read, but I'm not like a week to week guy with DC.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, that's the funny thing about comics is it's nice in the era of Wikipedia where we can go and kind of connect the dots and everything without needing to buy 50 million comics. But back then, when I was growing up, I remember I bought this comic. It was a West Coast Avengers annual, or I got it at some garage sale, and it was the Avengers versus the West Coast Avengers in some, I don't know, alternate universe created by one of the Titans, or whatever. And and they're all fighting. I'm this is the coolest stuff ever, and I have no idea what's going on. And I don't think
totally.
I honestly don't think I ever even read the second issue. So for all I know, the West Coast Avengers, the reason why Dr. Druid doesn't show up anymore is because he's still on that planet, trying to get off or something. But it is kind of funny because it's I don't know. I kind of describe being a fan of music as a full-time job because you always have to constantly be staying on top of what's coming out and everything that. But comics, it's the same thing. I mean, if you want to know, reading Secret Wars right now. I don't know if you're reading that.
I'm about 2 months behind. So I'm I've got 3 weeks of Secret Wars under my belt, and then I fell behind. So I'm going to get back onto it in a little bit. So I get done playing video games and get ready for the NBA.
Man, seriously, hobbies. We need more time for our hobbies. These job things need to go away.
Yes.
Anyways, but yeah. So that is just. I mean, Secret Wars it's incredible, but at the same time, it is so sprawling and just absolutely ridiculous. And I love Jonathan Hickman, but man, that guy. He doesn't do things small.
Well, the thing with here's my thing with Hickman, who I also love, and I think he's Marvel's Grant Morrison.
Yeah,
he's the big idea guy.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing with Hickman is always, I would just rather read the trades with him, and that's not a knock on him. It's just
it makes more sense.
Yeah, issue to issue, I'm what the fuck is this guy even talking about? I don't know if you were up on the Secret Avengers kind of stuff with the planets and the worlds colliding.
Yeah, I read all that.
Issue to issue, I was what? And then so I let it go for 6 months, and then came back to it right before Secret Wars. I was oh, okay, yeah, I got it. But it's and it's the same thing with his East West.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I was 8 issues into that, and I was I don't have any idea what the fuck is going on right now.
Yeah. I have to admit, I was a huge fan of his Fantastic Four stuff. I thought that was awesome. It was my favorite.
That stuff is great.
Yeah, it was my favorite Fantastic Four series ever, and that one actually worked like issue to issue. But then Avengers, I bought like the first like 5 or 6 of both that and New, and I was like, I'm out.
Yeah, it was like, what? Yeah, like the crazy alien world stuff.
Yeah, like the incursions and everything. I was like, I have no idea what I'm reading. And then, so what I did was I just stopped reading it until like, I think like 2 months before Secret Wars started. And then, do you have Marvel Unlimited by chance?
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah. So I read, like, I was like, all right, I'm gonna try the Avengers stuff again. I'm just gonna see if what, because I had friends who were telling me like, this is the best. It's amazing. And I was like, I don't believe you, but I'm gonna do it. And so I started reading on Marvel Unlimited, and they had like, because like Hickman was writing those, like he was the Flash and was releasing like 3 issues a month or whatever. I read, like, I was like, I'm just gonna read 2 tonight, and I think I ended up reading like 20. And I was like, at the end, I was kind of like a Coke fiend. I was just like, I gotta have it. I was just like,
that was really great.
Yeah, it was great, and like to the point where like Marvel Unlimited ran out, and I ended up just buying the rest on Comixology because like I couldn't be stopped. And I loved it, but you're exactly right. I think sometimes with those stories, because they get so big and like they're so meticulously plotted, you kind of have to like read them in like binges, because otherwise it just doesn't make as much sense and it doesn't have the same impact.
It's true. And well, the thing with the kind of like the Secret Avengers stuff and the incursions, that those plot lines, I think what Hickman's always best when he's got like a grounding relationship, like the Black Panther Namor feud was like was great for that entire storyline, because it gave it some like blood and guts. And Fantastic Four was just like, they're a family, so there was always that. Kind of like, as an aside, one of my favorite like single issues in recent memory is it's the one where Spider-Man and Human Torch like have an apartment together.
Oh, I think I remember that.
Yeah, and it's that was a great single issue where they just go out partying, and like Peter Parker.
Yeah, that was so good.
He hits up like a horsewoman or something. It's like, that's the kind of stuff where you're like, oh, Hickman, wow, he can do this as well. But I mean, I love him. He just can be so big idea, esoteric, that you have to. And then the other critique of him, which I kind of agree with, but which I don't care that much, is that nobody is themselves. They're all like Hickman, mini Hickmans. You know, like I would say that for me, like Captain America, or this, Steve Rogers version of Captain America, is the main culprit of that. He's like not himself.
Yeah, he's kind of like big government. He's like, I'm going, like, well, I guess it's supposedly because he's like driven by his like current hatred of Iron Man and everything, but it is a little outside his actual character. But as far as single issues, it is funny because every once in a while he'll drop one of those single issues, like that. There was that Fantastic Four issue where Ben Grimm lived for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah, that was good.
It was so good, and you're just like, wow. Like every once in a while he drops these like character pieces. You're just like, holy shit, he's capable of that and this. Yep. Like he's a very versatile writer, but it is interesting how he is much more known for his like labyrinthine plots and everything.
Totally.
So, like, besides like Marvel stuff, like, what are you reading now, and how are you reading it? Are you still buying print?
Comixology mostly, and then I'll buy trades. So, like Saga, I'm into Image stuff like Saga. I've been mainly buying the trades with that, or keeping up with the Comixology. I buy the trades for that just because I love looking at it I love looking at on the page.
Yeah,
because the art is like amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Southern Bastards, Real Heroes, whenever it comes out, which is like every like once a year or whatever, like he can manage to do. That's the Image stuff, and then Marvel, like pre-Secret Wars, I was reading Bendis's X-Men stuff, Daredevil, Guardians of the Galaxy, Hickman's Avengers, and whatever else, But that would be the main stuff.
I have to say, I'm a little envious of you, because I'm like, there's a big part of me that just wants to switch to trades, because I mean it's so convenient, and because like I'm pretty sure that our house, my wife and I just bought a house, and I'm pretty sure eventually it's just going to be like every room is just filled with long boxes.
Yep.
And it just gets out of control. And like right now, I'm like, I just set up an office in our new house, and like I have all these trades, and I'm like, I could grab one and read one right now, and I don't need like tons of bags and boards for it, and it's so nice. But
Yeah, I love having them on the bookshelf. I just love, looking at them. And I have like a lot of like if I really love, and I have a bunch of, I have the Thor omnibus, the Walter Simonson Thor omnibus. I have a
mhm.
bunch of Daredevil omnibuses and stuff like that. So I just love having them on the shelf.
Yeah, well, in the presentation for a lot of them is getting so much better, especially like the image books. Like I really love
Yeah,
like the design and stuff on the Saga trades. Like the guy that does that, his name's Phonographics, or I guess his name's Stephen Finch, but he goes by
yeah.
Phonographics, and he does a great job. They just look good, they feel good, and like I don't know, I buy that every month because I'm just a horrible addict. But I it's tough for me sometimes to not just switch to trades because
Yeah.
it's convenient, and it also like in a lot of comics they just read better that way.
It's true. I mean, especially in like, and this is from the perspective of like the wider like entertainment spectrum, but everything, like every entertainment medium has so much competition now, and
Hmm.
it's like, so, and people have less time, so it just is like, it's binging, while not always like the greatest way to watch something in terms of like talking about it with other people. It's just kind of like the way people do things now. It's
Hmm.
like I'd rather let there are certain titles that I'd rather let go for like 4, 5, 6 months and then pick up the trade, or go back on Comixology and just read like 4, 5, 6 issues in a row rather than go issue to issue
Yeah.
with. Yeah.
Well, and that's it's interesting you say that because like I did this like retailer survey not that long ago, and I talked to a lot of or like comic shops fairly regularly because they have a pretty good idea as to what everything that's going on in comics. And several of them, like when I was asking them like what's like the biggest competition you guys have, like expecting like Amazon digital
Right.
comics, stuff like that, but a lot of them were just like Netflix.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
it makes sense. Like, you got that, and then you got like Daredevil, and you got like the Jessica Jones series coming out, and you got like, I don't know, the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, and you got all
yeah.
kinds of stuff that's just competing with them for, I mean, not the exact same, like, Daredevil and Jessica Jones are obviously the same audience, but like, I don't know, like, I love the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, and so I would like sometimes when instead of reading comics, I'm just like, I'm gonna sit there and watch that again because it makes me laugh.
And it's easy to watch. It's like,
Yeah.
if you want to watch another one, you watch another one, and that's the kind of thing that not just comics, but a lot of every entertainment medium is dealing with, how to answer that question of how to give people what they want in the time frame that they want to consume it.
Yeah, exactly. We are a needy society, and we want
Or
everything
needy.
now. We want it now. Especially with Avengers comics, apparently for me. So now switching over to basketball, like
Sure.
I mean, you're very notably a Knicks fan, but when did you first start getting into basketball, and more specifically the Knicks? I assume that they basically started at the same
Uh,
time.
Kind of at the same time. I mean, I just started like around the same time I started getting into comics. Like I started just getting really interested in movies. There was like, so I would always go to like the movie rental place and either rent like, I mostly rent like horror movies,
Yeah.
but I started renting those NBA entertainment videos, like Greatest Dunkers and
Yeah.
like fabulous basketball bloopers, all that stuff.
Hmm.
And before I knew anything about teams or anybody, I just was really into watching those
Hmm.
compilation videos. So I like knew players and stuff. And then I just, for the Knicks, it was partially like growing up in the area. They were good. They were kind of good, getting better. And there was like I had an English teacher who I hated, who hated the Knicks. So I was like, uh, I'm going to root for the Knicks just because I hate this fucking guy. And that's really, it just grew from there, really.
That is hilarious. So
Yeah.
you spite like the Knicks.
I spite like the Knicks, and then I grew to love them.
Yeah, well, no, I totally understand. I have to admit, so this is where our potential opposition is going to come into play. The first moment where I discovered that I loved basketball, I played basketball growing up, but the
Yep.
first moment I discovered I loved basketball was I randomly was watching the '94 playoffs between
Yep.
the Pacers and Knicks, and Reggie scored 25 points in the fourth quarter
Yeah.
and did the choke sign, and I
Yeah.
was like, I don't know who this guy is. I feel like it was kind of like he was like simultaneously a supervillain and a superhero. And there's something in my mind that was like, I like this guy's story. I like his narrative, and I'm in. He's like a destroyer of worlds. And I watched it, and I was like instantly like a Pacers and Reggie Miller fan. And it was funny though, because like, they totally lost the next game and were out, and because of that. But at that point, I was just like, it was on. I was just all the time Pacers.
I hated him more than any other player. And it was like, but in a like, that's like the highest form of respect I think you can give, is to like hate an opposing player. He was the guy that it was just like you just kind of like you just hated him.
Yeah.
I hate like even more than Jordan, who beat us all the time. You beat us even more, but because it was like, okay, it's Jordan.
It's losing. It's like losing to a god versus losing to a dude.
Right, some dude who's just talking is really annoying. It's like, God, and that forget it. The 25, the 25 points that was just unbelievable. And then the 9 points in 8 points in 9 seconds. I mean, just dagger. He just killed us in the worst possible times, and you could feel it coming when it would start. Where it just whatever happens, do not let him shoot. Why are you letting him shoot? I hated Reggie. I miss hating players like that.
Everyone's too nice these days.
I think that's true. I think there is something to that, because there is less interconnection of branding than there is now. But at the same time, I think you can still hate guys. They're still hateable, but they're not hateable in the way that he was.
Yeah,
he's still hateable.
Well, and the funny thing is like, I don't know if you know anything about his like pregame routine, but he would always get one of the PR guys to like scream like obscenities at him before games. And like, I thought that was the funniest thing in the world, because it was like he just needed to get in this mentality where he thought everyone basically hated him. And the funny thing is like he thought that, and for the most part, that was true. It's like he was kind of like the villain that people really rooted against. And
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Jordan never lost his cool, and he's like one of the very few people that Jordan went after, tried to fight. So I mean, that shows you. And also, I think it has a lot to do with the way he, with his older sister Cheryl, just constantly like dominating him, like at home. I think it's that kind, and always wanting to get noticed. And I think it's like you can see a lot of the way he came up and the way he ended up playing.
Mm-hmm. I do think it's funny though, because like, as much as Knicks fans hate Reggie and everything, and as many times as Reggie did like win out ultimately, like the Knicks, I mean, like I still think the Larry Johnson 4-point play is like makes up for all of it, because that is I don't think I've ever been more upset about a play in my life. I was like, how is that continuation? This is bullshit. It makes no sense.
That's honestly, like, I would say that moment is probably the best feeling I've ever had watching a basketball game. I agree that it's a iffy call. But on the other hand, like, somebody's got to get the iffy calls, and I think like for the amount of times that Reggie flopped, it's
my God,
yeah, it bounces out. I mean, if you look at like the last 3 that Reggie took during that like explosion in whenever that was, 93, 94, like
the 25-point one.
Yeah. I mean, he just like pushes who I think it's Greg Anthony, like just pushes him straight up, pushes him to the ground.
Yeah.
To get over. What I don't even care. It was a bad call, but it was the greatest moment. It was at an Allen Houston game winner against Miami. Probably the best basketball Knicks moments of my life.
Yeah, I do feel like the Larry Johnson play, like, I'm a fan, but at the same time, I'm like not going to be completely unreasonable about it. Reggie, the leg kickouts, he totally shoved over John Starks in the 8 points 9 seconds moment.
Starks, that's right.
And then like beyond that, like he got away with a lot of shit. I love him, but he did. And
I think in basketball, and it's hard to reconcile this when you're a fan, but I think if you really look at a lot of stuff that happens playoff wise, game wise, basketball wise, and it evens out.
Oh, totally.
Like it evens out. Like even like if you look at Sacramento Game 6 in 2002, they got screwed, but they had like 2 open, 3-pointers in Game 7 at home, and they couldn't get it done. It's just like one of those things.
Yeah,
it evens out.
Totally. Well, and I do think that like that was the Larry Johnson 4-pointer. That was the lockout season where they were the 8 seed and the Pacers the 1 seed, right?
Yeah.
Oh God. I'm really glad that I'm remembering details to this and then feeling worse about it. I'm like, thank you, Larry Johnson.
That was one of those things too, where it's like, ah, this is over. This is really over.
Yeah.
You know, the game it's over.
Mm-hmm.
That was great. That was really one of the, and you know, it's like I felt kind of, you know, that was coming like on the heels, not really on the heels, but of the suspensions in '97 against Miami when they were up 3-1.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, like they, it wasn't the very. I think it was maybe the second usage of the coming off the bench suspension rule, where
Mm-hmm.
if you off the bench during a fight, it is either it was one of the very first times it was used, and they suspended basically the entire team. You know, where they had to like put it over 2 games because, or the rest of the series because like
They wouldn't have enough
you know,
players to
they would,
dress,
yeah, they would
basically.
have, and it was like I've never been more. If I've never been happier than during the 4-point play, Larry Johnson play, I've never really been. I've never been angrier than when that happened, especially like against Riley and the Heat. And they were up 3-1. They were going to win the series and play the Bulls. That was tough.
That was the Jeff Van Gundy hanging out to Alonzo Mourning's leg thing, right? Was that it?
It wasn't that.
Oh.
It wasn't that play, but it was. It was PJ Brown flipped Charlie Ward like into the stands.
Oh God.
And then it just like popped off.
Yeah, you really don't see games like that anymore. There isn't a whole lot of like out and out brawls. I mean, excluding Pacers like infamous brawl, but you know, like you don't really see like a whole lot of flipping people into the stands or anything like that.
And the league is better for it. By the way.
Totally. Like I mean, like I don't think anybody wants to see like Patrick Beverley like go after Russell Westbrook anymore. Even though like, God, Patrick Beverley, man, I have a love-hate relationship with that guy. I think everybody does. But
he's like the prototypical love him if he's on your team guy.
Totally.
You know?
Well, man, I rooted for Tyler Hansbrough for a few years. I know all about that.
Oh yeah.
Oh God.
Hansbrough is. I love the thing I love about Hansbrough is he's always got this look on his face like you just said something about like his mom or something.
Yeah.
Like just looks so geeked all the time. I think I once tweeted something like Tyler Hansbrough comes off the bench looking like a guy who just saw someone lean on his car like out of the parking lot. You know.
I totally. Yeah, it's kind of like somebody just like ripped a huge fart right next to him too. Like he's just got this like stink face. Like what is happening here? How dare you do that in front of me?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was. I actually my friend. I play a lot of basketball too, and my friend is a big Heat fan, and he also plays exactly like Tyler Hansbrough. So he was my best man in my wedding. So I got him a custom Heat jersey that said Psycho C on the back of it.
Nice.
Yeah, he was pretty happy with that. So one thing I want to talk to you about is I've noticed this. I don't know if you've noticed this, but it seems like a lot of like I follow a lot of NBA bloggers on Twitter,
yep.
and a lot of NBA bloggers and some NBA players, notably like Brooke Lopez and Robin Lopez and Roy Hibbert, are comic fans, and there's like tons of references from them. I remember one time seeing Roy Hibbert ask a question about Negan from The Walking Dead on there, and of course everyone started making fun of him for falling over all the time. I'm like, what does that have to do with it? Anyways, but there's also a ton of hoops fans who make comics, and it seems like it's a much higher percentage on both sides than I'd expect. Why do you think that is?
It's a good question. I think part of it, at least from the blogging sense, I think that they're, I think one, it's like, it's just more socially acceptable to like talk about it, I think, in a way now. Like it's not something and I think it's, I think for me at least, a lot of like my love of reading came about because of reading comics,
Totally.
And so, and it also like, and it coincided with an appreciation in the wider culture for like the form. So it's like you're not like a total castaway, cast out. You can talk about it with other people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just, I think it's just closer to the surface as an influence for people to talk about. And also, with the Marvel movies and the DC movies, I think it's just that much more in the zeitgeist that you can just talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there it's just there as a reference to mention,
I actually, and I have a theory about this. like to a certain degree too. Something else that kind of contributes it, because we were talking beforehand, like we kind of grew up roughly around the same time period of like comics and basketball and everything like that. And I think a lot of like the bloggers or NBA writers and stuff like that who are doing it now, like some of the bigger names and everything, they kind of grew up in the same period that we did. And it kind of, there was like this overlap between like 90s comics were kind of like, they maybe not the peak for creativity, but they were like the peak for like sales and popularity. Like you had the death of
100%.
Superman, and you had like all the like the X-Men like record breaking launches and stuff like that. And then you also had like Jordan, and you had like, you know, it was just like a huge time for both. And it like, I just kind of think that like maybe it was like the formative years, like everybody was growing up. I was growing up. I was a Reggie Miller fan, but I was also an X-Men fan, and like everybody else, I just kind of wonder if there's an overlap there that kind of triggered to like those fandoms growing up together. I also noticed a lot of wrestling fans too, which is interesting.
Well, I mean, I think you're onto something with in terms of like comics reaching a peak right before they kind of bottomed out, really in the mid '90s. But like you look at the guys that broke away and formed Image, like before they did, were, and even like after they did, they were rock stars. You know, Liefeld had a Spike Lee commercial, you know, a jeans commercial about him.
Yeah.
You know, McFarlane, like all those guys had created like a really. I remember when I first saw the McFarlane Amazing Spider-Mans, I was like, like holy cow, this is incredible. And even Liefeld, you know, like he gets so much shit that I really feel like it's so undeserved. I'm not saying that that his stuff is like the height of like artistic taste or even technical like ability, but I think he was an important figure in terms of being as young as he was, and then being a guy who, as a as one of like the creators of Image, has really paved the way for a lot of people to be able to put out their own comics and make money for it and own their properties. I think that's like, I think he gets shit on like too much for like, you know, having too many pockets on dudes and not drawing feet.
Yeah. Yeah, I talked to somebody, not specifically about him, but like about like the early Image stuff on the podcast a couple podcasts ago. And like, I kind of feel like it's a bit of revisionist history, like looking at it now.
It really is.
Yeah, where like you're like, oh, everyone looks at the 90s as this like scourge that almost killed comics, and then there was like the pouches and all the ridiculous stuff. And yeah, sure, those are kind of silly, but at the same time, like, that guy is like kind of like a precursor for today's creators in all forms, because he was like, like you said, he was a rock star. He was like personal branding. He was connecting with people in a way that comic creators never had.
That's exactly right. I mean, he like, whatever you want to say about his art now, and when I first saw it, it was exciting. I mean, yes, the perspectives were off. He's not a great drawer of feet. But there was really something very, very fresh and energetic about that style, and also, you know, obviously Lee's. But it's like there was an energy there that just when you looked at like fucking John Romita Jr. or whatever, you're just like, you know, whatever. Yeah. Like it was really exciting. And yes, when you look back on it now, like it's not, it's semi-embarrassing, but like, it connected with youth at the time in a way that really has not been matched. And I think, like, if you watch the Image documentary and you read stuff about Image and the amount of people that he got into the industry and he hired, that he put on, I think he gets way too much flack for the shit he's done. And he's created some legitimately important characters, you know.
Deadpool.
Like, yeah, I mean, you know, like these guys are still around doing stuff, you know. So it's, I think he gets way too much flack, you know, way too much. And you know, like the eventual, when the bubble popped, the creation of Image really, I think, is one of the most important like things that's happened in recent, and just in the business, like in order to give creators a way to, you know, it's like they can switch hit you look at so many people that do, like Nick Spencer does Ant-Man, then he does like Morning Glories. It's like you can now there's a way where you can, work for one of the big two or both of the big two and also put your own stuff out. It's like you can play in multiple sandboxes now, and you couldn't do that before Image, and Liefeld was a part of that. I think he gets shit on way too much. I think.
Yeah. Well, and like you were saying though, like, a person like Nick Spencer can like write Ant-Man, and then he can use that money to fund his creator own stuff, which is the stuff he's all passionate about. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know. I think it's such a important part about comics that like not a lot of people pay attention to, because it's always like people love alliances in comics. It's always like I'm all Marvel, or I'm all DC,
right,
or I'm all independent and stuff like that. But like, even like there's some really influential creators today who, do you know who like Ed Piscor is? He did Hip Hop Family Tree. Yeah. Like, he is a huge Liefeld fan, and he actually did a mini comic all about Rob Liefeld in like, as I think it was like an add-on to the. It was like an add-on to the 2-in-1 for Hip Hop Family Tree, but like he's a huge fan. Brandon Graham. There's some like big names in comics today who like look at him as like this super influential guy, and I think part of it too is just like he broke the mold, because at the time like everything was like. As much as I can look back at that West Coast Avengers comic and think it was totally awesome, like comics were one thing, and like I think like him bringing out massive guns and cybernetic arms and Cable and Deadpool and stuff like that, like that kind of changed the game. I'm not going to say it's necessarily entirely positive, but it did change it in a way that comics hadn't done in a long time.
I agree with. I 100% agree with you. I mean, yeah, it wasn't the most, like, you look back on it now from an adult's perspective, and it wasn't the most tasteful like thing ever. And but at the same time, like a lot of the sins that he is that are foisted upon him, or that he is like seen to have committed, you could say the same about any of the guys, like, and it was mostly guys like working in that era, and he just takes he just takes most of the blame, because he was the most popular, and he arguably the most popular, I guess. But and he created a lot of these like characters that are still out here like doing stuff, and you're like that are slightly controversial in terms of like being good or bad, or thought of as like good characters, like Cable, for instance. But I think he gets too much stuff. And I think he's a really important figure in terms of like the evolution of comics. And it was really exciting. It was an exciting time.
Yeah. What the funny thing is like, and I don't know the exactitudes of this, and I'd love to know, but I think he, like, nobody else does this, but I think he at least co-owns the rights to Deadpool and Cable, like with Marvel.
I don't know about that. I'd love to find that out.
I like, because he always talks about it, and I've seen him tweet about how he co-owns them, and I'm just like, how is that possible? And is he going to be stupid rich next year?
Yeah,
probably. Anyways, well, let's transition into the actual NBA, into the upcoming season, and one of the things I want to talk about, and this is much to my chagrin, I was an NBA League Pass choice subscriber where I got 5 teams. I'm guessing you, because of like your all-encompassing NBA nature, I'm guessing you're just all League Pass.
Yes.
But for me, that means I got 5 teams, but that's now dead. But I want to honor its memory by still picking 5 teams who would be our League Pass honor teams for this upcoming year. Like, what would be like the 5 teams you would pick to be the ones you want to watch this year?
I would go with the Warriors first, because I think they're still going to be really good. I think they should be one of the favorites to win the championship, if not the favorite.
They're on my list too. They're so fun to watch.
They're just fun to watch. They're great to watch. They're a very exciting team, and they're in a lot of ways like the cutting edge of like all these strands of the way the game's been evolving.
They're the Rob Liefeld of basketball.
The Spurs, even just because normally the Spurs, because like with Aldridge, I'm just excited to see what that's going to be like. I would say, let's see.
Wait, really quick, have you seen the Spurs like play live, like in person?
Yeah, a couple times, a bunch of times.
My wife is from San Antonio, and we went down there and I watched them play the Rockets, which was simultaneously amazing because the Spurs are just unbelievable to watch live because they're passing. It's just ridiculous. But also I got to watch the Rockets, and when it was the last Omer Asik year, and Omer Asik is really funny to watch live because he both is very bad at shooting free throws, and it's like he's so effective for how clumsy he is.
Yeah, I mean, I think part his clumsiness actually. I think he's one of those guys where, uh, much like Danilo Gallinari, where it's like the clumsiness helps because guys can't figure out what they're going to do. It just
Yeah.
you're not used to you can't read their body positioning because it's just you don't know where they're going.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like not to totally take us off the rails, but it's like Harden being left-handed. I feel like
Yeah,
that gives him like a 15% boost because like when I'm playing against left-handers, it's like I might as well be playing against like a Martian because I have no idea what they're doing. It's like
right.
everything is reversed and confusing.
Yep. Yeah, you just don't have that muscle memory.
Hmm.
Of like you're so used to guarding right-handers.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
I would say.
sorry,
Mhm.
really quick. I was just gonna say Spurs are on my list too, and I love watching them. They're really fantastic, and it should be a really interesting year with LaMarcus.
I agree. Then I would say the Pelicans because Anthony Davis is amazing, and uh, I can't wait to see their offense unlocked. I would then say the Clippers, not just because they're good, because I think they're going to be like the most hateable team in the NBA. Um,
Not a big Lance Stevenson fan.
you know, yes and no. Like I like watching him because I enjoy chaos. I just I think that team. I don't know, there's just something like I've never. They're just one of the most unlikable teams that is also a very good team that I can
Hmm.
remember in recent history. Like going back to, I mean, like you look at like on every level, like Doc Rivers is super annoying. He argues like every call, even when it's like obviously the correct call.
Hmm.
Chris Paul is one of the great. Is I mean, I think he's the for me like in terms of pure point guards, I think he's the best. But he's also like the greatest flopper and biggest like one of the biggest complainers in the league.
I was just gonna say I would say one of my favorite random moments from I think it was the Spurs series where like DeAndre Jordan got the rebound at the very end of the game and could have put it up to possibly win, and he just started having this tantrum
Yeah,
next to him.
yeah, screaming, "Put it up, shoot, shoot!" And he's just like, he's just. I've. He's also one of those guys where it's like an interesting, like, he's an interesting example of how quickly people like can just turn on a guy, like because it was, you go back to the New Orleans years and it was like point God, Chris Paul, the guy could not do any wrong.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, the things that kind of like quote unquote basketball like intellectuals would complain about, like pounding the ball all the time, hero ball, you would totally forgive if Chris Paul, dribbled for 12 seconds, trying to find that perfect pass that he wanted to set up or draw the defense in just the right way. And now it's like, oh, fuck Chris. Like everybody is just annoyed with him. And plus,
Hmm.
and I think, you know, all the losing in the playoffs, it's just his career has come to a point now where it's like people look askance at him. He's really great, but he's also annoying. Let's see, and Lance, now with the addition of Lance, it's like it's amazing. There's so much there that
Yeah,
that they hate.
yeah, they're gonna be the soap opera team because like you always kind of get the impression that they don't really like each other. Like it's like and then like there was the whole DeAndre thing with
That
the
was, and that's just adding more fuel.
yeah. Yeah. I think they're gonna. I honestly think that like Chris Paul is going to just kill Lance Stevenson. It's just like he's gonna be a DNP one day, and everyone's gonna be like, "What happened to him?" Like we just don't talk about Lance anymore. He's
Yeah,
gone.
he's just Lance is just a wild card in every sense of the word.
Well, and I as a Pacers fan, I loved Lance. Like he was great having on the team because like the Pacers were all like Roy Hibbert and David West in the post and George Hill doing what George Hill does. I love George Hill, but I mean like in like those teams, he was much more. He didn't push anything. He was just like part of a
Right,
machine, and like Lance was like that part that like threw everything off, but in a way that worked. Like he
right.
was
He's chaos. He makes chaos.
yeah, and it was necessary because otherwise the Pacers would be like the most predictable team
Right.
ever, and like they can't throw entry passes to save their life, so you need somebody who can like actually do something with the ball. So yeah, I mean I appreciate Lance, but at the same time, the Clippers will be really interesting to watch.
Yeah.
And
I
so
think
who's your last team? Sorry.
the Heat, because I think they could go. They could go so many different ways. They could be like in the finals, or they could like totally bottom out, or they could be whatever. but they're a really interesting team for me. Lance. To go back to Lance, I think Larry Bird doesn't get enough credit. I think for being the force that kept Lance under control. Like the amount of time he put into like mentoring Lance. I think that really helped. I don't know why that didn't work in Charlotte with Jordan there, but like that same kind of dynamic, but for whatever reason, it just didn't,
I've just, Larry Bird has always seemed like, I don't know. I mean, it seems like he gets these projects and it's like he just becomes like really like, he gave Lance, in my estimation, I mean, I obviously am not like trolling the halls of the Pacers like stadium and practice facility and everything, but he seems like he gave Lance attention that he didn't even give like Paul George and stuff.
Yeah,
because he needed it. And like I honestly I really like, if you remember, like right after he got drafted, like Lance had a domestic thing going on.
yeah.
And I honestly thought they were going to cut him. Like I really didn't think they were going to keep him because he was already like all problematic coming out of Cincinnati, and he had like the whole his dad was very all up in the business and everything. But Larry believed in him, and I think that, I don't know. I guess I've never really got the impression that Michael Jordan is as hands-on in that way. Like
right.
I kind of like. Have you ever seen Midnight in Paris?
Yes.
I just imagine Michael Jordan is kind of like the Ernest Hemingway from that movie in terms of basketball. Where it's like he's really competitive to the point where he's like, I'd play you in basketball, but then I'd have to destroy you. And
well, I mean, look at Kwame Brown and his career. Like he's a guy that really could have. A lot of people say like he could have been, if he could have been in a more nurturing environment rather than like Michael Jordan yelling epithets at him. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like basically Michael Jordan seemingly is like the internet in person, where he just like will say what, like everyone's always like, people will say things on the internet that they won't say in person. Michael Jordan will say those things in person.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
Yeah. So my five, I actually had I had the Spurs and the Warriors and the Pelicans also. I think the Pelicans are like, watching that Warriors series last year was simultaneously like incredibly fascinating and kind of tragic, just because like once the Warriors would get going, there's just nothing the Pelicans could do about it.
They couldn't do anything. They couldn't stop. And I think Monty got
overwhelmed.
He got rightly crushed for the timeout, but it's like at the same time that team wasn't good enough.
No, totally not. And like I think Alvin Gentry is going to be really interesting for them.
Yeah.
And also like, like I think he could. I think Eric Gordon could be really, really good if he could stay healthy. Because he's such a good shooter and he's such a good fit for today's NBA. But like, I mean, it's such a weird team. Like, I still don't understand why they got
weird team.
Like, I don't understand why they got Tyreek in the mix at, like, when they signed him. I guess they technically signed and traded for him, but they got him and they got Drew, and then they also already had Eric Gordon. It's such an odd combination.
Well, I mean, it is odd. I mean, the thing is, Tyreek kind of found his niche, like as the primary ball handler for them. But he's just one of those guys where it's like, how do you fit him in? Where does he play? Like, he doesn't finish really well at the rim. Not a great shooter. It's like, there's just not a place for guys like that in the league anymore. I mean, or less and less of a place, especially, for perimeter guys that can't shoot. Like if you can't draw fouls, shoot, or finish at the rim, then like how are you helping the team? Like pretty much you're not. And he's just one of those guys like Tyreek, man. And he's like got a flair for like the wrong decision at the wrong time.
Well, it's always the beguiling thing about him is like one moment he'll make this play where you're just like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. Wow. And then he like throws the ball into the stands and you're like, what? Like on a pick and roll to Anthony Davis. I'm like, how do you overthrow Anthony Davis?
That's part of the problem with that team last year is like they couldn't really, you never got the sense that they knew how to get Davis the ball in a way that really maximized what the team could do. And part of that was just like, Tyreek is better with the ball in his hands, and then he's not a great shooter. Like there's just like there's a lot of structural things with that team. But I think with Alvin Gentry, it'll be exciting to see like how they mix up some of their sets.
Yeah.
Unlock things a little more.
So my other two teams, I'm a total homer, and I have Pacers on my list, but I do think they're going to be very interesting, going from like this ground and pound team to like Monte and like and Rodney Stuckey. I don't know if you actually watched any of the Pacers last year.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, Stuckey was exciting.
Yeah, Stuckey was great for him. It was like the perfect type of player that they needed. But him and Monte have pretty similar skill sets. Monte is a much better passer, but so him, like George Hill, like if they're actually starting Paul George at the 4, which it really seems like they're going to, like that could be a really exciting offensive team, especially if like Frank Vogel, like he's always, since he came in, he's been a defensive coach because that's what kind of the personnel called for. But supposedly he was always like a great offensive mind. He's good at out of timeout plays, but I've never really noticed him, like the Pacers offense has never been exactly dynamic.
Yeah. Well, I think that this is one of the more interesting like turnarounds for a team, like in terms of like their core philosophy, because it's like 2 seasons ago it's like, oh man, Roy Hibbert is revolutionizing defense in the NBA, and then it's like, and then a couple months ago it's like, well, Hibbert's going to come off the bench and we're going to play small, and if he doesn't like it, we can move him anywhere.
Yeah,
it's like, wow, that happened.
Yeah, I remember reading like a couple years ago, like, is Roy Hibbert a max player? And everyone's like, yes, absolutely. He invented verticality. It's the Roy Hibbert rule. And then like the Pacers trade him for a 2nd-round pick.
It's amazing. It really is like an incredible turnaround, and I think also like the right move.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can make a case like over the last couple of years, holding on to that identity has meant giving Hibbert like way too much slack like on offense at times, where it's like they had to get him touches because otherwise he wouldn't be engaged on defense, and that's like their whole thing, and it's just bogged them down at times. So I'm really they are definitely an interesting team. They're a team to watch this year, just to see like how they switch gears on that whole. It's it's like a 180 philosophical 180 in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it completely is. It's gonna be it could be a complete disaster, or it could be like amazing. I really think that they could. I mean, I'm not going to say that they're going to be like a 1 seed or something like that, but I could see them being like a 4 or 5 seed, or I could see them being in the lottery really easily.
Yeah,
and I think they'll be fun to watch, which will be something like, as much as I love the Pacers and I'm totally a homer, they're not always the most fun team to watch when they're the ground and pound team.
Yeah,
and I think that they'll at least be entertaining. And I actually like Monte Ellis as like a like distributor and like guy who's like setting up pick and rolls. Like the theoretical Monte Ellis and Paul George pick and roll could be really awesome. And then my last team, because I actually had them on my league pass last year, and because I'm a sucker for young players, I'm actually gonna have the Wolves on my or theoretical one.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just I'm not talking badly about Flip Saunders because I know he's going through all kinds of stuff, but I wonder if Sam Mitchell is going to make them or have them shoot more threes, because it is kind of amazing watching them last year where they just post up literally everyone.
Yeah.
And like you have like Ricky Rubio is good at one thing, and it's like breaking down the defense and hitting somebody that you can't even envision being open, but they are. And like I'm trying to imagine that team like if they actually like used like Andrew Higgins or Wiggins, excuse me, as like I don't know, something more than like they posted him up so much last year. It was crazy. Sorry,
talent is going to be amazing.
Yeah,
I think he's really exciting.
Well, and it's an interesting team because they have so many young players, and then they also have like Kevin Garnett and Tayshaun and like God, who was the other one that they got? I thought they got another veteran. Oh. Anyways, but they all like, and they got Pekovic, and like they're loaded with good players, but it's hard to envision them formulating into something that's super cohesive. But it should be really interesting to watch.
Yeah, and I think Towns, watching him up close at Summer League, and just like there's of course there's going to be kind of like he's going to need time to get used to the league, but his vision is really amazing. Like even the pass, like when he turned the ball over, he turned it over in ways that were like, wow, he saw that pass. So yeah, they're going to be Towns. I think is a real deal. guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be like a stud.
Yeah, and I think they'll be really good a couple years from now. I'm not sure about like I think I don't know if we're quite at the point where we can say Anthony Bennett is done, but like
he looks done-ish.
yeah, he looks done-ish, kind of in the same way that your boy Derek Williams does. But
Nah. Well, I think Derek Williams is. They're very similarly done.
Yeah.
In that, although here's the thing, like Bennett has more talent. Like you could see, like
Yeah.
in theory, if Bennett was like the theoretical Bennett that's in shape and that is not like suffering from sleep apnea,
Mm-hmm.
and he can shoot threes, he can rebound, play defense. Derek Williams can't shoot. He's kind of a good cutter, and it's like he just has no one in the world, least of which him, has any idea like what position he plays.
Yeah,
so it'll be really interesting to see if he can get. I mean, Phil Jackson was talking all kinds of like positive stuff about Derek Williams, but we'll see.
Yeah,
I'm not for one a believer in Derek Williams.
I have to admit I was talking myself into him. I was like, man, maybe if the Pacers traded for me, he could blossom, and we got this guy now. I'm like, I really feel like if he
the Pacers need another guy that really can't shoot at all. I
don't. Well, that's the funny thing is like I was just going to say that I don't like his last year in Arizona. Well, actually, I guess it was his only year in Arizona. Like he all of a sudden was making threes like he was Reggie Miller, and everyone was like, if he could shoot the three, he's going to be unstoppable. And then he made it to the NBA, and he just can't shoot anymore, which is kind of a problem. But
yeah, he's just like in every facet of the game. It's like he seems like he's like got a kind of not a great basketball IQ, can't shoot, not a whole lot of handle. He's like a very athletic guy. When he cuts the basket and gets a good pass, he can dunk it. But it's like he just doesn't give you much of like anything else.
Yeah. Well, he kind of falls into like a classification of player that I've seen many a time where they look like a really amazing basketball player.
Yeah.
Like all of the characteristics are there, right. But it's just like when it comes down to like basketball, like the ability to play basketball, it's kind of like, like Andre Miller. Oh, that's the person I was thinking of. Andre Miller is on the Wolves now.
Yes.
And Andre Miller like is just kind of like, he kind of seems like that guy you would like think wouldn't have very much if he played in a 5-on-5 game, and then he's just like trying to throw putback dunks down, and he's like dropping dimes like crazy. And you're like, where did this guy come from? And I kind of look at them as like the opposite. Like one is like marvelously gifted physically, but has no idea what to do with a basketball. And like Andre Miller, if you told me he actually slept with a basketball in his bed, I would not be surprised.
Andre Miller, also one of the weirdest guys in terms of like the way he ties his shoes.
I didn't know that.
You can Google this. It's like he wears several pairs of socks, which is not actually weird, but he doesn't pull them all the way on. Like he has this floppy piece like at the end, and then the way he ties his laces, he ties them. He has a lot of like length on the laces, and then he ties them like around his ankle. It's it's bizarre.
I think I remember seeing something on that, like back in the day on the Basketball Jones.
Yeah,
back in the day.
He's a weird dude.
Yeah, well, he is. He kind of seems like, I don't know, that's the interesting thing about the Wolves is like all their veterans besides Tayshaun, like Kevin Garnett and like Andre Miller, I kind of feel like I would hate playing with them, even though they would totally make me better. Like
I think Garnett is one of those guys who's like who's the dick, but you would get a lot better.
Yeah, totally. You're like, I appreciate your insight, but you're making me feel really bad about myself right now.
Right.
All right. Well, the last thing I wanted to go over was a kind of a marriage of the comic world and the basketball world. And basically, I want to talk about some of the most interesting people for the upcoming season. And in specific, I want to figure out who their comic character equivalent is. And I want to start with the reigning MVP and NBA champion, Steph Curry. What comic character do you see him as, and why?
Man, he's one of the hardest guys to figure out who his comic book character is. I was really wrestling with it, just because we've never really seen a guy like him before, who like his ability to make bad shots be great shots, be great offense, and like the way he can affect the defense, like when he's like 40 feet away from the basket. I don't know. Franklin Richards, I don't, it just in terms of like him being like having powers that are incredible, but are also like untapped,
Undefinable.
undefinable
Yeah.
reality warping powers.
Yeah, like Franklin Richards' power set is basically like the equivalent of like that shrug emoticon. Where
Yeah, it's like whatever you could do. Can you want to turn back time? Sure. You want to
he's,
create like a person like out of nothing? Okay, you can do that.
he's like, I don't want my parents to go away in the onslaught fight, so I'm gonna make a ball that they
Yeah,
can live in for
yeah.
a
Live
while.
inside.
Yeah,
He's like like the young Beyonder, but innocent and good.
exactly. Oh god, yeah. Like I could go on and on about him in the Hickman series because like when he made Galactus his herald, I was like, oh my god,
Yeah,
this is the coolest moment ever. I actually, so for Steph, I labored, like, I was like kind of thinking about like marksman and things like that, but I was like, that's not right. I actually went with Nightcrawler.
very interesting.
And
Teleportation.
well, because do you remember that one play? There was a play last season that was vined like crazy, and it was like I don't remember who they were playing, but they basically had 4 people on him, and he did like 2 spin moves and somehow ended up on the other side.
Wait, is this the one where? This is not the one where against the Clippers.
I think it was against the Clippers, yeah.
Yeah.
Where they were basically like, it was like as if it was the NFL and they had like
Right.
spies on him, except for they decided to cover him with everybody. And somehow he spun out of it, got into the center of the court, and then went out to the 3-point line and shot a 3. And I was like, I don't even know how he got through those people, let alone doing any of those other things. And I've actually always had the theory that if like you could draft any comic book play or character to play basketball, it would be Nightcrawler first. Not just because of teleportation, but because he's like this crazy nimble gymnast who can like get low and roll around. And if I remember correctly, there was a game, X-Men comic where they played basketball and he was just like spinning the ball in his finger and like being like a total baller and everything. So I kind of envision him as Nightcrawler.
Interesting.
Yeah. So next up is James Harden.
I struggled again. I struggled with James Harden, and even now
I can go first if you want.
Go, do it.
Okay, so I went with '90s Superboy, like Connell, because he's like, and here's my reasoning. It's not exactly the play type thing because I don't think there's any equivalent for like his like skill set or whatever in comics, but I see like Superboy was this super badass guy who like was like totally like Superman, but I feel like a lot of people kind of like secretly hated him because of like how he did things. And I don't think anybody like secretly like the people who don't like James Harden really don't like James Harden. I actually like James Harden, but I could totally understand why his style of play grates on people. So for that reason, I'm going with '90s Superboy.
I guess Jamie Madrox. I guess Multiple Man. It's because it's just it's kind of like cheating his like James Harden's power, but you can't argue with it.
Mm-hmm.
I am one of those people that I fully appreciate. I think he's an incredible player.
Mm-hmm.
Like his skill level is unbelievable. His passing is really beautiful. He's got a great handle, augmented by the fact that people keep forgetting that he is a lefty.
Yeah.
But just like the way it's just everything is like draw contact, contact, and it's like the same thing with Jamie Madrox. It's like draw contact, create the clone.
I like that. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Well done. Yeah. No, like he's like when I went and saw the Spurs and the Rockets a couple years back, I was with my wife's family, and like they were so infuriated by the fact he was always drawing contact. I'm like, it's like it's legit. It's not like
it's legit contact. Let's start there. Like, it's not. He does flop at times and create something out of nothing, but I think that's really the minority of the time. Like most of the time, it is like legitimately guys are grabbing him on the. He's the one thing that makes it all work is he's like got incredible like strength in his hands because watch him when he clamps on that ball and goes to the lane, guys are just all hacking him all over his forearms and he never drops the ball.
Yeah.
So I do that. I appreciate him. I would just like prefer not to watch like tons of free throws all the time. That's just like an aesthetic thing.
Oh god, then your league pass choice of the Clippers is a doomed proposition.
I just because there I feel like I'm going to see maybe a fight. It's just
maybe between the Clippers themselves.
Yeah.
All right. So next up is a guy I'm very interested to hear your perspective on. Kristaps Porzingis.
Well, we have no idea. Here's the thing about Kristaps Porzingis is like we just don't know like what can he really do. When I going into summer league, I expected him to kind of just be primarily like a shooter. Mm-hmm. Young shooter, and then he all of a sudden showed like an aptitude for defense and ability to use his length like in really intelligent ways. I honestly have no idea what to expect from him this season, other than I think he's going to hit the rookie wall maybe a little faster than other rookies, just because he looks like he weighs like 110 pounds and he's like 7'2".
He gained 11 pounds, I read. So that's good,
I guess.
So he now weighs 172 pounds.
Yeah, he's another guy. Like until I see more of him, I can't figure it out. Like it'd be like one of the like really random like Young Avengers or Teen Titans or something. Like I have no idea. Like what
I couldn't either. And actually, I asked my wife, and I feel like she kind of nailed it.
What did she get?
This may be insulting. I just explained who Kristaps.
Let's hear it.
Groot.
You know, I have Tim Duncan as Groot.
that is also awesome. But I'm gonna explain like so. Yeah. She like I explained Kristaps and like all of his skill set and how he's like super tall and skinny and everything like that. But I also explained to her how it's like I kind of feel like Groot is like one of those characters who like for forever he was like this random creation in the 60s who no one knew what to do with. He was just like this space monolith thing made out of trees or made out of wood. And then like all of a sudden he became this superstar who's in movies and stuff. And I kind of feel like Porzingis, like a lot of his career, and I think it's the same with like almost every player, but a lot of his career is going to be dependent on like how like Derek Fisher and Phil Jackson handle him. Right. And like, so it's like, it's kind of like in comics, there's these characters who like, a good example is Deadpool. Like if you read the wrong Deadpool comic, he's a horrible character. But if you read the right Deadpool comic, he's awesome. So I feel like Kristaps or whatever we're calling him is very dependent on the creator or like the people around him, I guess. I don't know. I'm very curious to watch the like body language of the Knicks this year. It's going to be very interesting.
It is going to be very interesting. I think a lot of it, that body language will depend on like how pissed off Melo gets.
Yeah, exactly. Like I just imagine him shooting like laser beam eyes at Porzingis, although he did have Bargnani the last few years, so I feel like he's probably used to like hopefully he doesn't just think he's Bargnani. That would be bad. He's
going to be better than Bargnani.
Oh, he's got to be. He's got to be.
No, but I have described him in the past as like Bargnani but good, because that's like really the idea of what Andrea Bargnani was going to, what everybody thought he could possibly be. I think that's like closer to what Kristaps will be, but don't know yet.
I can tell you what though, like I saw Porzingis block Towns in the summer league, and like it wasn't even like it was like a legit block. Like he was kind of like a semi chase down after he got past him, and I was like, wow, I did not see that coming. And
yeah, he uses his length. He uses his length very like intelligently.
Yeah,
he's not one of these like 7'2" guys, 7 like Euro stretch shooters who's like I wish I wasn't tall. He used his length really well, and also like the thing that I really appreciated about him, which is kind of like an intangible but whatever, is that he was like Towns was kicking the shit out of him like physically. He couldn't deal with him, but he never stopped competing against him. And then in the second half of that game, he really switched up the way he started fronting a little bit more. And it's like, well, I can't keep this guy to the post, so I'll try and front him. So I just like the competitiveness that he showed.
He's smart too.
He's smart. Yeah, he's smart.
That's good. Well, so go to Duncan. Why is he Groot?
Duncan is Groot. He hasn't always been Groot, but he's Groot now. First of all, because they both really don't say anything.
That's true.
they do most of their talking with like their actions. And I think because uh, Groot is a guy that doesn't really, you're like, why is he here? What is he doing? He doesn't like, he's kind of melts into the background of these more exciting players. And then when it's crunch time, Groot will do something that only Groot can do, and the universe will be saved. You know?
No, that is very, very spot on. I feel like so my choice for Duncan is actually went with the eternally impossible for me to pronounce because I don't. Everyone always pronounces it differently. Ra's al Ghul.
Okay, it's like the
So
master of like dark shadows and things like that.
I assume that like after Duncan gets off of like after he stops playing a game, they just put him in like a Lazarus pit. And like he's like eternally like functional. He's like I get out of bed and like my body hurts, and he like goes out there and he's just doing his like left block bank shots over and over, and there's nothing anybody can do to stop it. And it's like he's just like the eternal destroyer who doesn't make a big deal of it.
He's so good at like uh at staying at like maintaining his energy level so that he has something left like at the end. And if you watch him, like he's been on one leg for like the last 2 years.
Yeah,
it's like really incredible.
Well, in like in that Clippers series, like he was so amazing because a lot of the Clippers or a lot of the Spurs were not, I mean, and like a lot of them are old now, and a lot of them were not really playing up to their normal standards. But Duncan was like basically like a man keeping them in it by himself, not by himself, but like he was. That was just you don't see Duncan needing to bring that out very often, and seeing it against the Clippers, it was like a reminder of like this guy is just unbelievable.
Yes, very Groot-like.
Very Groot, very Ra's al Ghul-like, you mean?
Yes.
So natural transition.
Yeah.
Greg Popovich.
Oh, I has him as Nick Fury.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Previous, like not
Old
the
school
deposed.
Fury.
Right. Yeah, before he was deposed.
Mm-hmm.
So like spy, Fury, ultimate manipulator, guys like getting the most out of like a bunch of people who don't really know that they're being used in that way.
Yeah,
the mastermind.
Exactly. Like did you read Original Sin by chance?
Yes, I did.
Oh my god, that is that. I don't know if that. It was hilarious.
It wasn't. Listen, it wasn't great. But I liked a lot of the stuff that came out of it.
Yeah.
Like
I kind of liked, I liked it just because it was so comic book.
Yeah.
It was just so like ridiculous and over the top, and it was like, of course he's like a defender of worlds and has like 70 million life model decoys that go and eat chicken with Captain America.
Yeah.
Like that
Nick Fury in space assassinating aliens.
Not only that, but like actual gods and stuff like that. Like I remember when I was a kid, I had all these like Marvel Universe cards, and like they had like the cosmic characters on it, and like they had like one of the guys he killed was like the Living Tribunal in Original Sin, and there was like on the card it was like all sevens, and I'm like as soon as I saw that, like there was this childlike moment where I was like, that guy's all sevens. How could this happen? It's unbelievable. He's got
that whatever that bullet it is that he's got.
Yeah, the magic magic Nick Fury bullet. I feel like yours is better, but I'm gonna go with mine anyways. Did you ever read Preacher?
Yeah.
I was gonna go with the Saint of Killers.
Oh, there you go.
Like
I see that.
I feel like Popovich, partially because he never talks, and because like I imagine if Saint of Killers did like quarter interviews like Popovich did, like they would be the exact same. Right. But also because like he's just like this unstoppable force that kind of seemingly came from nowhere. Like I don't really know Popovich's background. I just remember like where he just took over for the team, and like he was already the general manager, and now here we are, and 4 championships later. It's just he's ridiculous. All right, so near and dear to my heart. Don't break my heart with this one, Paul George.
Oh, no, why don't you go first then?
Okay, I'm gonna go with mine, and mine is actually probably super insulting. Because I love Paul George, but he like during that season where they were doing like the GQ shoot and they all fell apart, and like he was started doing those Papa John's ads and all this stuff like that. He got like, I feel like the brand of Paul George got a little bit bigger than Paul George the player.
Uh-huh.
And I love him, but the reason why that explanation is why I'm going to say Booster Gold from DC. Do you know the character?
I don't know that character.
Okay, so he's like basically he came from the future, and he like has this robot with him that's named Skeets. He's absolutely ridiculous, and he took his knowledge of the future to like make him able to become like this like superhero who always knows what's coming. Like he knows like when disasters are going to happen, so he can go there with his suit that augments his strength and makes him able to fly. And he uses all that basically to like make a bunch of money. And like he's got like advertisements all over his uniform. He's just a ridiculous person. But you should read 52 sometime. It was written by Morris.
That's a title?
Yeah, it's 52. Like there's an omnibus actually, the whole thing, and it was co-written by Mark Waid, Grant Morrison, Jeff Johns, and Greg Rucka. Mm-hmm. And Booster Gold's one of the main characters in it, and like he like ultimately it shows him becoming like a true hero. And I kind of feel like Paul George is much. I feel like the injury, which I've never seen. I want to point out. I was going to see Guardians of the Galaxy.
Don't ever go see it. Yeah, it's not worth seeing.
No, I've avoided it like the plague. I was actually going to see Guardians of the Galaxy the moment I found out about that. And like as much as I love that movie, I was utterly depressed throughout the entire thing because of that happening. And I kind of feel like if he comes out okay physically, it might be good for him in the long run. I know that sounds terrible, but like I kind of feel like it's kind of refocused him, and like even watching him play a little bit, even his like kind of shell of himself he was last year, he seemed like I don't know, like he was fine-tuned in some of his skills, and he seemed like he kind of had his head in the game a lot more. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it and being too hard on him because I'm a Pacers fan.
I had him as Deathlock.
Okay.
Because for the same reason that like I feel like the post injury, I think he has a chance to be a better player. Mm-hmm. And I think that's because of Deathlock's massive pre-bionic like injuries.
Yeah,
I think it's like post injuries we look at Paul George to really go to a new level of player. Develop his offensive game, become more of a not just like a pure slasher.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, I feel like, especially if they are opening up the offense like they're saying they are, which they have to because they don't have I don't think Jordan Hill is going to become like the David West. I think that like him being more involved with the pick and rolls, and I think him. Like, he's actually, you were talking about Towns earlier and how he would see the things and sometimes they would turn out into turnovers. Yep. But, like, I think Paul George has good vision on the court that he isn't necessarily able to implement all the time in the ways that he wants to. But I wonder if, like, being able to be away from the game and, like, practice some of the more fundamental stuff because he wasn't able to play 5-on-5 and everything, I have to wonder if that's going to be good for some of the smaller parts of his game. All right, next one. I think we're gonna have the same one for this one, but DeMarcus Cousins.
Oh man, I had a couple of people for him, and I still am not sure who to do. But I would think maybe I was a toss up between either like Lobo or the Hulk.
I put down the Hulk. I feel like it's gotta be the Hulk, but I hadn't thought of Lobo. That's pretty good.
Yeah, because it's just he's just when he gets angry, it's like that's it.
Yeah,
he's uncontrollable on all levels, and also like just when he wants to destroy someone offensively, he can just do it. Yeah. He's just like, and he's one of the strongest guys in the league. One of my favorite games from last year was him versus Anthony Davis.
Oh yeah,
because that's going to be a great matchup for years to come, just because like. They both kind of cancel each other out in interesting ways. Davis has the length and the mobility, but DeMarcus is just so strong. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So we'll go with Hulk because it's got to be the Hulk.
Well, and like not to get too deep into it, but did you read like Peter David's Hulk stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, so like remember when he became like the unified banner Hulk where he like wore shirts that didn't rip and like and like was smart at the same time. Like I hope we get to that point with DeMarcus because he is so amazing. He is so good at basketball, and it's just like I feel like the Kings are just doing like this elaborate like like game on him or something like that, where it's just like I had a friend who was at that game in summer league where like DeMarcus and like the rest of the team and like George Karl were there, and he
Yeah.
was like, you could just like feel the awkwardness.
I mean, I hate to say it because I really loved there was a time in my life when the Kings were like, when I was living in California, it's like the Kings were my team, but he's like, yeah, I think he's got to get out of there. They're
Yeah.
just like, it's just too chaotic, and I don't see how they get their shit together anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he's really just burning up years of his career, and like, you know, that's like a team that's at war with itself. It's like has no idea what to do like half the time. It's just
It's really weird.
It's weird. I just hope he gets some stability in his career. I hope the Kings find some stability too, because they're a fucking hot mess.
Yeah, and it's sad too because they have like their fandom is like really like through the thick and thin. They're like supportive, and I'm like they went through some
really
shit.
really supportive. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you.
So you just mentioned him, but who would Anthony Davis be?
He's like, let's see. I also had him as Franklin Richards for a little while, but I think I would have him as probably the Silver Surfer, but like who doesn't know how to do anything yet.
No, totally. I understand.
Like he's like, it's hard. It's a little hard to say because you just get this feeling that he's like just kind of glimpsing the things that he's going to be able to do. But I think he could be like a just one of these guys that redefine the NBA in terms of what guys of a certain size are able to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's just scary.
Well, so the character I chose was an old Justice League villain named Amazo. Do you know him?
I know Amazo.
Yeah. So like basically his just for the listeners is like he has the ability to like take the powers of basically whoever he's fighting more or less. And I kind of feel like he's like we're totally going to hear this for his entire career where like he spends the off season developing something else and you're like how can he do that? He's 7 feet tall. And like but I saw the video of him like just like making like shooting corner threes and like I don't know if you necessarily want to put like Anthony Davis in the corner to shoot threes and stuff like that, but the fact that he's capable of that,
right?
It's just like I don't know. You hear the stories sometimes about like players who were guards in high school, then all of a sudden grew up 7 inches, and all of a sudden they're like a center and stuff. And a lot of times that ends up being awkward. But for Anthony Davis, it just means that he's like pretty good at ball handling. He can pass. He can shoot. I mean, that guy is like such a jack of all trades that is amazing at everything.
Yeah, he's really, really, really terrifying.
I'm really excited to see what the next one you're going to choose is Russell Westbrook, and I feel like I nailed this.
I have him as Wolverine.
It's a pretty good one. I like it.
Like Frank Miller Wolverine, really before he got a handle on his temper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like that. I seen him like break his face last year, and like oh my god! When I saw that, I was just like, I would be laying on the ground still because I'd probably be in so much pain. But he was like, I'm just gonna miss one game and keep playing. Like that guy is such a beast. It's unbelievable.
He's unbelievable. He really is amazing.
I went with Namor.
Wow.
Because can't you just imagine Russell Westbrook like scoring on somebody and then screaming Imperious Rex in their face?
Yes. I can.
Like he just seems like he's got this like he knows he's better than everyone else, and like he just will like he does those like just charges to the rim where it's like the only word he can really use is like violent. Like on the way there,
it is extremely violent.
Yeah, and it's like there's really like nothing you can do about it besides like get in the way and hope you don't die in the process. And I just kind of feel like in his mind he's kind of like the king of like the NBA, like and like they're his like subjects and they need to bend their will to him. Yeah. And I think I honestly as somebody who I like the Sonics growing up, and I do like the players and the Thunder and everything. I hope they get to where that they should, because like it seems so ridiculous that a team that good doesn't win a title.
I mean, they've been so close, and so I mean, forget about the Harden trade. Like they could win it even without that. It's just they've been so close, and then the recent injuries and bad luck. It's just like they should do it. The amount of talent they have is like it's amazing.
Well,
It's amazing.
yeah, it really is unbelievable because like having just, I mean, not even like again, not even talking about like the Harden trade, but like talking about having a player like Westbrook on a team with a player like Durant, like that doesn't happen. And then like you throw in Ibaka, and like I know he's not exactly like everyone's favorite player, but I feel like Cantor with Ibaka in theory, it's one of those things that like just makes sense, but I don't know if it's actually going to work out. But like they have so many, and they have a lot of good ancillary players too. Like I like Kyle Singler. I don't think he played very well for them when he was on there.
He didn't really do anything.
But I feel like he can do things that a team like that needs, which is just make corner threes.
He's one of my favorite translucent NBA players in history.
What does that mean?
I feel like you can see like his veins pumping like under his skin. He's like one of these guys that's so milky white. It's like unbelievable how pale he is.
He is unbelievably pale, but he's I didn't realize you're going to be going with literally translucent. I was like, what does he mean? Is this a term that I don't know yet?
Yeah. So I guess he would be the Glob Herman of the
Nice. See, I thought I should have thrown in some more random players so we could drop some like Glob Hermans.
Yeah.
You know, actually, Quentin Quire would be a pretty good Russell Westbrook too.
He would be. That's a good one actually, because just because the attitude, the powers and the attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hope they can be healthy next year, because the thing I hope people really appreciated like what they saw from him last year, like when he was on those 40-point triple-double, like that run, because just like you won't see that. I just don't think like human biology allows you to do that again for another, you just won't see that again. It was amazing.
I was, and I was amazed too. Like I had a friend, he's a Suns fan and he's a massive hater of the Thunder. And he was like, doing the total ESPN commenter thing of like, oh, like a point guard shouldn't shoot 40 times and all this stuff like that. I'm like, you are witnessing one of the coolest things ever to happen in the NBA, of like this person being like one of the great players in the NBA being unleashed in a way that he's never been unleashed. And we're watching this happen and all you say is he should shoot less. I'm like, you're missing the point.
The thing is, I technically I agree. Like, I think that the Thunder probably won't reach their potential unless like he can rein in his instincts at the right time.
Yeah.
But I just that was just flames. I mean, you have to appreciate that for what it was, because you're not going to see it again.
And that's one thing. I mean, he does have his lapses where he does that in games with like Durant and everything like that. But for the most part, he does keep it reined in. I think it was just, I don't think he'd be shooting 40 times a game if it weren't for the fact
right, exactly.
Like it kind of called for it, because I don't know. I have to admit though, he does shoot a lot of mid-range pull-up jumpers, like those ridiculous ones that I feel like would tear all of my like ligaments in my knees.
Yeah, and it's a terrible 3-point shooter too, and he shoots it, and he lets it go.
Unbelievable amount too. Yeah. All right, so we're gonna finish with the number one top dog, LeBron James. I'm curious as to who you got.
I had him as Batman.
All right.
Because of not just the kind of the all-around skills that he has, also that Bruce Wayne also has, but also because of they both have a kind of business acumen.
Mm-hmm.
And also they're very interested in creating like a family atmosphere,
mm-hmm. With the Robins and everything like that.
Robins and Nightwing and like their whole like extended family. And that's exactly what LeBron does with his, with Rich Paul, and then like the agency and the way he takes care of like the players that he takes care of, the way he like got real upset when he like, let Mike Miller go, like that, it's like that kind of, so it's that, that the family atmosphere plus the all around skills plus the business acumen.
Yeah. I don't remember who wrote it, but did you read that article about his personal hairstylist?
I didn't know.
It was amazing. Like this guy who he basically paid to
Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah. The guy that he met through Wade, and like he paid for him to move to like Akron so he could cut his hair like every day. I'm like, wow, that is like a lot of haircuts. And he was getting them to cut all the calves like hair too. And I was just like, it is interesting how like, and you could see that in like the documentary about his like high school team. Like he's all about like the family and making it like, you know, he's not just talking. He wants his teammates to be his friends, which is part of the
Yeah,
reason why that Kevin Love stuff is so interesting.
I agree. That's why it's interesting to me. But that's been kind of like his personality, like his whole career is he's kind of is trying to recreate that high school team where they were just all bros, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, so my choice is, and you need to read this comic. I'm going to first off say it. It's a manga series that just came out, like the first. Well, it's been coming out for years, but it was just translated to like collected volumes, and it's called One Punch Man.
One Punch Man.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it totally starts out like a typical like Attack on Titan, like big monsters in Tokyo type thing. And then there's this dude, One Punch Man, who's a hero for fun, who he literally can beat anyone in one punch. He punches them and they're done. And like the entire comic is about basically him being like he's like a nomad who's like trying to find someone that it would be a challenge because he spent his whole life becoming this like master of like what he does, that he like goes around trying to find somebody who would last more than one punch, and everyone disappoints him. And like I just imagine like LeBron seems like do you remember that, did you ever hear that story about how Larry Bird played an entire game or like an entire half shooting left-handed?
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of imagine LeBron as that, where he's like, I don't think he would have been happy staying in Miami and continuing to win championships, because I feel like he felt like that chapter was done. And like I feel like he's kind of in search of like, I don't know, like it's like he's in search of something more than just being really good at what he does. It's like he wants to find the best and he wants to beat the best with like the best challenge to it. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that like going to Cleveland was a bad decision, because obviously going to a team with like Kyrie and then like getting Kevin Love on it and everything like that is like that's an amazing amount of talent. But it certainly wasn't like the comfortable and easy decision.
Right.
And so like for that matter, and just the fact that he's like an absolute beast, One Punch Man. That is my choice. And you should definitely read that comic because
I will check it out.
It's hilarious. Well, that's actually all I got for you, Jason. I really appreciate you coming on and talking with me.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel from Sketch.com. You can find this week's guest, Jason Concepcion, on Grantland, covering basketball, comics, Game of Thrones, and much more. He's also a great follow on Twitter under his handle Network. That's NETW3RK. You can find more sketch content at Sketched, that's SKTCHD.com. Follow us on Twitter at SketchComic, and like us on Facebook at /Sketched. Tune in next week for another episode, and thanks for listening.